Nothing exists in a vacuum. There is no celestial phenomenon that takes place that isn't in some way connected to the larger whole. And in this way, even the larger tapestry and the way in which it moves has its perfection to it and supports and contributes to all the little pieces that are playing out at any given time. Ever since the month of November began, both Jupiter and Saturn began to slow down and appear to stand still in the sky. Whenever it is that a planet is stationary, it appears closer to the Earth than it might otherwise be, and is therefore heightened in its symbolism and our understanding of how it's showing up in our own lives collectively and individually as well. And as these two planets appear to be standing still throughout the month of November, they are speaking in supreme harmony at the same time. And this makes for an easy exchange of energy that ultimately is incredibly supportive. Jupiter is about growth, hope, expansion, luck as well. And right now, Jupiter is in a sign that it especially loves to be in, the sign of Cancer. And then we have Saturn. Saturn is in the other water sign, Pisces, and slowing down, standing still throughout this month, bringing a sense of longevity, bringing a sense that whatever we're hopeful about, well, we believe that we have the potential to manifest something better, something different based on the hope, the expansion, the sense of possibility and tangible opportunities we very likely are able to seize now. Well, this week we do reach a pivotal moment as part of the magnification of these really big energies. And that is because on Tuesday, the 11th of November, Jupiter will officially go retrograde. And it is going to be later towards the end of November on the 27th that Saturn will officially go direct. And as we stand in this moment right now with Jupiter gearing up to switch directions, to turn its energy inwards, it invites us to ask ourselves what real luck really is, what healing actually is, and also in the sign of Cancer, what's home going to be for us? How will we identify it? How will we define it? How will we embody it and live it that much more? What is it that we've gone out into the world to search for home to be? And where is it now that we might find it within ourselves? Well, that's just the very beginning of manifesting an entire world and an entire life that feels more like home than we knew it to be before. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of November 9, 2025. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. A limited number of consultations are now available with me online over on my website, nadiyashah.com, and in person later this month in the one and only Montreal, Canada. You can learn more. Sign up for yours now. Links are in the description below. Astrologically, the planets that I think get the most attention, at least visually so, right? What really stands out when we look at the sky is probably the sun and the moon, right? First and foremost, the sun, because it's very undeniable. It lights up the entire world around us. The moon as well, in its own way, very undeniable in the way in which it brings light at night and to the dark. But after that, when we are observing celestial phenomenon, it is usually Jupiter that many of us have seen, whether we've been able to identify it as such or not. It is Jupiter that appears especially bright and bold in the sky. And of course it would. It is the larger of the planets out there, especially the main astrological planets that we might use outside of the luminaries, the sun and the moon. And as such, it has come to symbolize what is bigger than life. And what is it that is bigger than life more than anything else? I would say that it is hope. Hope is what defines so much of what it just might be to be the best of being human, so much of how it is that we're able to make incredible things happen, whether it's personal healings, remarkable turnarounds, or seizing bigger opportunities, or cultivating them than we knew before. And so when we have a big planet like Jupiter appearing to stand still in the sky, it becomes that much more significant, that much more vibrant, that much more visible to us out there. As is the case now, with Jupiter standing still and going retrograde on Tuesday this week, it is going to bring with it awareness, illumination, insight into, ultimately, for the collective, what it takes to have a feeling of home. That is a big part of what Cancer is about. This is Jupiter standing still in the sign of Cancer, after all. But what is so fascinating about this, because nothing exists in a vacuum or in isolation, what I find so intriguing is that as Jupiter is going retrograde just 2 days earlier, as we begin this week on Sunday, Mercury going retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius, and in contrast to the sign of Cancer, which represents home and foundations and our own sense of ancestral, ethnic, and even national identity, the energy of Sagittarius is about the world. It's about understanding yourself as a world citizen and feeling the world open up to you, feeling connected to people beyond just these shells that we have that separate us from each other based on borders or colors or cultural backgrounds or even languages as well. The energy of Sagittarius likes to explore so that you might see yourself in everyone, regardless of where they originate from and what it is that they even might believe as well. That's when the energy of Sagittarius is at its very best. But Mercury in Sagittarius is open to the ideas of around the world, and it's open to having certain discussions that otherwise can feel a little touchy. Like, for example, talking to somebody about the differences of their religious beliefs to yours, their political beliefs to yours. These are things that can push buttons, but with Mercury representing an energy that is so much of mind, it invites us to bring healthy detachment. Consider that both of these energies are happening pretty much simultaneously, right? Both planets are going retrograde at the same time. One, Jupiter, having to do with being in Cancer, understanding our roots, and the energy of Sagittarius, which says, well, if you think about it with Mercury, if you use your mind with Mercury, you realize that really we're all rooted in the same place. And as such, the entire world is ours to feel at home in. And so with these planets changing directions and going retrograde in particular, whenever it is that a planet goes retrograde, the energy of that planet turns inward. And when a planet is going direct, it's like we experience the matters having to do with that planet in terms of our external circumstances, what's happening with others around us, where we feel provoked or evoked by external circumstances. However, when a planet goes retrograde, we're invited to look at our part. We're invited to find a deeper understanding. We're invited to take a greater responsibility for how we are experiencing and even using the energy of that planet. We're invited to look at how we might need to adjust something within ourselves if we're going to have that energy manifest in a way that feels more conscious and especially that feels more to our advantage. There are times when it is about what's happening in the world and getting out into the world that's going to allow the greatest gains. But then there are times when it's a lot more about understanding what we are aligning with within and choosing to direct that energy in a way that aligns us with what it is that we hope to live, that we hope to embody that much more fully. And this work, this separating ourselves from the world, but knowing we're connected to the world, knowing that there are things and places where we are much more at home while knowing that everywhere is home, well, it all serves as this very imperative lesson for us now. There's a sense of urgency in these understandings for some of us out there, but also whatever understandings we're having likely are going to feel incredibly consequential. Now, one of the reasons is the fact that as Mercury stands still and goes retro, it does so hand in hand with Mars in the sky. Now, the perfection of that connection between Mars and Mercury takes place on Wednesday this week, but we are going to be feeling this energy all week. because of how slowly Mars moves, but also because it is that Mercury is already at the height of his power, already is changing directions, appearing to stand still in the sky. And so there is urgency, there's adrenaline to what it is we're thinking about, and a sense that wherever it is that we are to be, whatever it is that we believe about the world in a larger sense, we either are willing to fight for it, we're willing to go out there and be passionate about it, to state it, to find a sense of power within it. But also remember, the energy of Mars can be deeply transformative. We emphasize so much of Mars having to do with the fight. It is Aries, after all, embodied in the sky that we call Mars. And this is the ancient god of war and of athletes. So yeah, but the thing is that Mars speaks to lots of different power players at any given time. So it doesn't necessarily mean, and especially in this case, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of external strife taking place. However, there is a sense now of some strife based on ideologies, ideals, maybe even dogma as well, and based on belief, political, religious, philosophical, or otherwise. Years ago, I remember reading a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. It's also called the big book of that 12-step program. And lots of 12-step programs will actually use that book. It's a fascinating read. And in the first part, it sort of outlines what it is that they're stating, the meaning of their 12 steps. But then the second part of the big book has personal stories. There's one story in there that I remember so clearly because it was, and if I remember correctly, it's called Doctor Heal Thyself, but I don't know, that might have been a previous edition. But in this story, this person talks about how when they would, in their case, drink, right, whatever it is for you or was for them, and they could be in a bar and they would be having a drink, and by having that drink, they would find themselves feeling like exalted, where they would solve all of the world's problems and they'd be able to just tell it like it is and let someone have it and let their voice be heard. And they would right all these wrongs, whether it is in the world or whether it is the wrongs that they feel were done to them. It's like they have found the perfect words, even though it is only in their own minds. And even though the reality is or was that they were sitting in a bar drinking a lot, drinking for them way too much, and yet they were transported in some way to a matter that was in the past or a matter that is some fantastical fantasy in the future. And this is the way that the author described it, ultimately a exploration of a deeper discontent that is unable to be acknowledged. And so these are some of the ways in which we might direct that very energy of discontent. And I would say, you know, when I look at the world now, it's incredible how and the different ways in which that state of being continues. And it isn't about, of course, whether or not you drink too much or whatever the case might be, but it is about the ways in which we sometimes want to avoid what it is that we're really feeling or what it is that ultimately is going to help us to feel at peace, because our desire to feel righteous, our desire to feel right, our desire to feel powerful is stronger than our desire to find a sense of peace within ourselves and a sense of acceptance for where we are in our lives. Because it's only by having some sense of acceptance that we're able to acknowledge where we are. And that really is the foundation of taking ownership for our own experiences and our own feelings as well. All of our feelings, they come from somewhere, and it's the desire to understand where they come from that would allow meaningful healing to take place so that we can more consciously decide what our responses to the world are going to be, or at least be able to identify what we're really mad about, which might not have anything to do with the things that we feel we have to let someone else have it about. And so now I share this because it is one thing for us to have a certain feel, to have a certain response to somebody. It is another thing for us to be able to stop and say, okay, why am I having this response? What's really going on with me? because at the end of the day, people are doing whatever it is that they feel that they need to do. And very often, if not almost always, it has nothing to do with us at all. It has to do with some deeper discontent that we're not able to recognize, we're not ready to recognize. And that's the thing with this Mercury station conjunct Mars that I think is so fascinating, because it is in the energy of Sagittarius, which is all about those subjective truths, our subjective sense of what's right and wrong and where we've been wronged and what others need to do so that we could be right. But the thing is, there's no power in that, in focusing outside of ourselves. However, there is distraction in that from the things that might be too hard for us to look at within ourselves. I think what many of us are longing for, really aching for, is the feeling of being alive, a feeling of adventure. And in contrast to that as well, a feeling of belonging. They don't need to be in contrast, but sometimes it can feel like they are. And we go into these patterns and we don't always realize that we're actually in a place of some fear of the new experiences that we're actually craving, fear of allowing in something new into our heart, into our minds, in terms of our life and the stimulation, in terms of taking a chance, because it's those very things that have led themselves to us feeling hurt in the past. And so where does that leave us when we are in a profound sense of discontent, but it's been hard to acknowledge it? Well, there are moments that come in a life where we really don't have a choice. We have to see it, what's really going on, and also where it comes from, as a way to empower ourselves so that we might align with a life, an embodiment, a beingness of aliveness that we don't have to fear, that we know we can feel it all and still be safe in the process. I'm going to share a bit of a personal example here, and it's not probably what you think it is. A neighbor, a lovely neighbor here to my parents, and this very interesting, lovely person over the last couple of years has taken to calling the city and saying that whatever's happening at my parents' house, like maybe the weeds are coming in on theirs, or maybe the grass is growing too long or something like that. And the city has been here, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years. Every time they come, they say no violation. There's no violation here. And this was getting a lot of us kind of angry. I remember my brother and I were getting very, very annoyed by this. And we really didn't like it, especially because my parents are just, they're elderly. They just want to live their life, right? Have a peaceful home, try to live these years with as much sense of peace and happiness as possible. So it just really felt very, very unfair. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh God, this person is so miserable in their marriage that it's easier to look at whatever weeds they're imagining on my parents' side of the lawn rather than to look at themselves and how they really feel about their marriage. Now, it was very apparent to me. And so for a while, every time I'd think about them and I'd feel angry, I'd think, oh, that person's just miserable. Oh. And then I had this realization a few months back. I thought, you know what? If I know that this person is doing this because they're miserable in their marriage, well, I want to wish them a very, very happy marriage. I want to wish them that they just might feel so in love with their life, so in love with their spouse, that they don't even notice. They don't even see what's happening with the grass on the lawns, with the bird feeder, or anything like that again. They just don't see it because they are so wrapped up in their own happiness, because that is what is going to solve this problem. And that's when I started to literally pray, right? Or request or align my energy, however you want to understand it. But I decided to change my approach. And look, so far, there haven't been any complaints. I haven't seen anybody being snarky or anything like that. It seems to be going, fingers crossed, a lot nicer and a lot better and a lot easier. So yeah, I think it's so interesting that on the one hand, yes, it could be that it's just worked out that way. But what it is that it does to change my own energy, right? To not be angry, but rather to send love. In order to send love, you have to feel love. You have to allow yourself to feel love. And to allow myself to feel love and then direct it, well, that can be a very powerful way to change our own lives, to practice this very intentionally. Well, it has a transformative effect, not just on the person we might be sending that love towards, but towards ourselves as well. Now, imagine if you don't know how to do that, or you don't know that you can, or you've never been shown that you can. Nobody's ever told you that you can do that, but you've had lots and lots of examples of people miserable who are just perpetuating more anger, who are feeding into, participating in some drama that seems like it's created outside of us from somebody else, choosing to get involved in it. Well, what is it that might do to our spirits as well? If love has a way of shifting something profoundly within us so that we're able to recognize all that is good, to manifest even more of it, well, the opposite might be true as well. And thereby comes the choice, especially with energies like this week. Mercury retrograde, hand in hand with Mars in the sign of Sagittarius, is saying that you can change your world. Quite literally, you could change your understanding of your place in the world, your relationship to the world, and how you experience the world itself by changing your mind and by deciding what it is that you're going to believe about the world around you. But then Jupiter going retrograde in the sign of Cancer, one of the more emotional energies in the zodiac. It is about emotion, and the sign of Cancer is about going through the experiences that allow you to learn how to separate fear from intuition. Sometimes there's a fine line. Sometimes it's very clear, but we don't see it in the moment. We don't realize where the fear is being magnified versus what we're telling ourselves is actually the intuition or the instinct. Well, Jupiter stationary retrograde in Cancer is going to invite us to find that distinction and to figure out what it is that we want to feel. What emotions is it that we want to amplify, that we want to see grow within us, where we experience it, we vibrate with it, but how it is that that contributes to our actual practical experiences in the world as well. To see that connection is a very empowering way to decide that we're going to focus on the things that we can control. And one of the things that we can control is the decision to focus on love when we have a very clear instance of being provoked in a direction that's taking us the other way. To consciously decide that, no, we are going to align with love, on the one hand, is brave. It can take effort and diligence, but it's amazing at the rewards it ends up reaping. And the rewards aren't necessarily about getting somebody else to do something different. It might be that, but it's about what we are going to feel within ourselves, whether we are going to walk through the world from a place of anger or fear, or whether we are going to choose to constantly, diligently, and sometimes it can feel like effort, but to decide that we want to embody love. Well, that becomes a pathway towards aligning with greater wisdom as well, very rapidly. Jupiter is the ancient king of all gods, right? This is Zeus. This is looking at the pantheons from around the world, and we see how Jupiter always stood out as something special, and the mythologies associated with this planet reflected that as well. But what is it that makes us bigger than we knew ourselves to be before? Well, very often we use expressions like, oh, it's the bigger person who walks away from a conflict, or it's a bigger person that can be kind in the face of it feeling like that's not what's happening around them. There's a reason that type of language is used, because there is a recognition that when we choose love, or at least when we choose acceptance, when we choose calm, there is something that is not only magnanimous about that, but actually quite healing about that to ourselves and others. Now, I'm not saying Don't assert yourself. I mean, I don't think I can say that with Mercury conjunct Mars in the sign of Sagittarius. Oh, there are going to be people who want to assert themselves, who want to say unabashedly what it is that they believe politically, religiously, and otherwise. And if that's part of your path and your process and what you're inspired to do as part of your healing, of course, you want to live it, embody it. If you want to fight for yourself or what you believe in some way that brings you peace, then of course, that is up to you to decide in light of your unique circumstances. However, there's something very powerful that happens when we remember how much of what we are experiencing has to do with what we are feeling, and how much what it is that other people are feeling that has nothing to do with us is part of what they're displaying. Even if it looks like it has something to do with us, it really might not. And to be able to grant that sense of grace to others is a way that we actually grant it to ourselves. But then I also ask ourselves, with Cancerian energy having to do with the ground on which we stand, what is that ground going to be made of for us? Is it going to be ground that feels shaky, that feels uncertain? Or is it going to be ground that feels rooted, where we feel fully supported by the earth? We feel supported and connected to the wisdom of the ancestors, whether or not we can intellectualize that. And the wisdom of the ancestors is just that. It's the emphasis on the wisdom, as opposed to the roots of pain or hurts or disappointments that our ancestors might have felt. It's all part of the human experience. And as much as we can find examples in our ancestry of people who maybe did things that we're not proud of, that we wish they hadn't done, maybe they did things that created pain for others, we can still always find examples of where it was that there were opportunities, there were windows to cultivate wisdom. And to root ourselves in that intention becomes a powerful way to actually heal generations and generations of ancestors today, as we decide we're not going to give in to the hurts or the pains or the reactions, the responses, like Pavlov's dogs just responding to a stimuli without thinking about why we're doing what we're doing, but rather to decide that we are going to build on the wisdom of what has been before. And as a result, now we're going to do things differently, not just automatically. And whether those automatic responses were rooted in our own childhood, our own past lives, or our own ancestral patterns, we now can see it differently, and we're invited to do things differently. And that is the great blessing of retrogrades. Retrogrades are magic. Retrogrades are necessary. Retrogrades always invite us to get honest with ourselves. Even if it's hard, even if we wish we didn't have to, it is through a retrograde that we are invited to reflect. And some of the most powerful reflections we're going to have is to ask ourselves why we made the choices we did, why we're having the responses we are, why we have the feelings that we do. And in more consciously, at least being willing to see it, well, something's got to change, something adjusts, something grows, something becomes more in the questions themselves. The question of why itself is part of what allows us to use the energy of the retrograde that much more profoundly, that much more meaningfully, in that it helps us to align with choosing love and choosing the path of greater wisdom as well. Now, on more literal levels, it is said that retrogrades are not the time to start something new. This is especially true with Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is so much about the small moments of our day as we move through life. It's about commerce. It's about shopping, decision-making, communication, what we're thinking, what we're speaking, what we're understanding from others, what we're understanding about what we need, whether it is what we need to do, what we need to acquire, what we feel are our choices, what choices we feel we have to take. And with a retrograde Mercury conjunct Mars, it might feel like we have to make a decision right now, but that might not necessarily be the case at all. It becomes important to strive to the best of our ability to be honest, but also where possible to allow ourselves space, to allow ourselves grace. And again, in very practical ways, if you are going into a retrograde and you know that you might change your mind, you know that, okay, all these planets are retrograde and I'm going to go and make this major purchase, or I'm going to head and go and make this choice or this decision. Well, if you're going to make the purchase, it might be a good idea to allow yourself to purchase somewhere where you know you could return or you could exchange, should you feel inspired to, should life take you in that direction, to have a conversation and make certain choices where you still know you're allowing yourself some flexibility, where you're able to acknowledge that this isn't you, signing in blood, some sense of a karmic contract here, but rather you're able to just acknowledge that, okay, this is an agreement for now. However, there are ways in which it could evolve and go in other directions, and that would be okay as well. Regardless of how it is that you decide to bring the energy of these powerful retrogrades forward, keep wisdom at the forefront with Jupiter retrograde, and also with Mercury retrograde. Know that misunderstandings become very possible, whether those misunderstandings are the ones you're having with others, or those misunderstandings are in terms of your own personal understanding and evaluation of what you think is really going on in some circumstance, if only within your own life. Allow yourself space and grace to change your mind should you need. Now, one thing I really do like about retrogrades, especially Mercury retrograde, and especially this Mercury retrograde that's making all kinds of connections with other power players in the weeks ahead, and I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way. The thing with Mercury retrograde that is especially promising is the ways in which people, places, situations, opportunities from the past, or that we thought were gone, that we thought, we'd had our shot and it was done and it was over. It's those very people, situations, opportunities that feel like they might come back around in sometimes uncanny ways. Now, Mercury rules transportation, especially the kind of transportation that's a little bit more local, or the actual nuts and bolts logistics of transportation is what Mercury rules. So whereas Jupiter is about long distance travel and going out for the adventure, wanting more experience. Well, Mercury is like the actual plane that you might be on. It is the people who might be working on the plane. It's your car, the car rides, the train, the bus, the automobiles, all of that stuff, right? That's what Mercury rules. And so it is not uncommon for some of these uncanny, seemingly random moments of reunion, of a return to something we thought was lost or gone, of an opportunity coming back around. It is not uncommon for this to take place in the process of transport, or while we are on some mode of transportation. And so being on the bus, running into somebody that you actually met one time on the other side of the world, that can feel completely random. And yet that's the kind of thing we're talking about when we talk about these uncanny surprise reunions that Mercury retrograde is often known for. It's the mode of operations, but it's also the modes of communication that are covered here as well. And so whether that is now, especially in our modern world, social media, like the last person you expected to see their profile, there they are. You thought you blocked them everywhere. Oh no, there they are for you to look at. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to contact them or you need to have any communication with them, but it is a very powerful way to just get that other look into, okay, here was a connection. This connection didn't work. Does it feel like there's an opening to try it again? Or does it feel as if you're just being reminded how grateful you are that that person is no longer in your life? Either way, it is karmic, it is uncanny, and it is powerful. And so it is also with opportunities, certain opportunities that don't work out. We don't realize in the moment how that's actually a really good thing for us until we see it, until we do. And sometimes we need these little reminders where it feels like an opportunity comes back around for us to be able to say, oh, wow, I thought that that's what I really wanted then, but now I see where I am now, and that isn't it. But it's also possible that whatever comes back around, even if we're excited about it and enthusiastic about it, it doesn't end up being what it is that we think it will be. Sometimes with Mercury retrograde, whether it is a new person that we're meeting, a new potential love or relationship, whether it is a new job opportunity and otherwise, sometimes things being different once Mercury goes direct on the 29th of November means that the direct brings with it, there's a whole other perspective that makes you say, oh dear, what was I thinking? Oh, get me out of here. But sometimes things can actually work out a whole lot better than we had anticipated, that we even thought was possible or a pathway towards it. And so if it feels like there are things in our life right now that are brand spanking new, not connected to anything from the past, well, then the likelihood of us understanding or recognizing or having things turn out in a way that's very different, especially once it is that we navigate into December, well, that becomes that much more possible. The difference is going to be there. And yet it still might end up being better than we anticipate, than we plan for, than we think it's going to be, as we find ourselves in this moment of welcoming in that possibility now. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It is a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. Well, I have to say it's all about the retrogrades now. It is the retrogrades that are the star of the show. Mercury retrograde happening just 2 days before Jupiter goes retrograde. And you add to this ongoing dance that's taking place, this ongoing, supremely harmonious connection between Jupiter and Saturn that is playing out now as both planets appear to be standing still in the sky. Technically, Jupiter goes retrograde this week, and it will be towards the end of the month that Saturn will go direct. I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way. But what that suggests is, as much as there's like the little everyday things that might be getting our attention or maybe even our frustration as well, with a Mercury retrograde happening while hand in hand with Mars in the sky. So yeah, the frustrations might be there. And yet we are that much more likely to see what wisdom is playing out in a given moment. That much more likely to see how it is that whatever's happening now, even the confusion, well, it is all part of some larger dance, the perfection of the tapestry of the ways in which these planets move and how they might just speak to what's happening with our experiences here on Earth. How it is that the planets desire to be known through us and how we might feel them in our hearts. Well, it isn't necessarily a journey that's direct. It's not an A to B to C type of thing, but rather it has nuances. It has deepening steps. It has moments of stepping back, of reflection, so that we can decide how it is that we might want to consciously co-create our lives with a very loving and very wise universe. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here's some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. Join me in beautiful Niagara-on-the-Lake, Canada, or in Montreal, Canada. Yes, save the date. All of these dates are coming up. It is going to be this coming weekend, Saturday, the 15th of November, that I will be having a live workshop event on Uranus and Gemini for Astrology Niagara, an incredible organization. I hope that you will join me. I will link to them below, but know that they are the ones organizing this amazing event. I will be there. I'll have a few books with me to be sold at a discounted rate in person, and I'll be able to sign them for you as well. But they have this wonderful community out there, and they would welcome you, especially those of you who are in Southern Ontario or are in sort of upstate New York, I think is what you call it. But it's very common for the communities who are sort of right in Southern Ontario, right in upstate New York, to cross the border, right? To move back and forth, to be able to attend different things on each side of the border. I remember I used to do it back in the day with the SOTA conference with the late, great Donna Van Toen. But yeah, whether you're on the American side or you're on the Canadian side, you'd be very welcome to this event. And it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a high-paced, active, loving, fun, insightful workshop event of 3 hours looking at Uranus in Gemini. So I hope that you will join me there. And again, those links are below. Now, that same night, I will be flying out to Montreal, and it is going to be on Thursday, the 20th of November, that there is going to be a meetup event. And this is going to be a free event in downtown Montreal. More details are to come, but just know and please save the date because it will be wonderful to meet friends and fans out there and to connect with people in the Montreal astrology community. I'm going to be there with Andy, my dear friend of Wise Ass Astrology. And so, yes, we're going to have this evening lovely meetup event. Like I said, it should be totally free. There might be like food and things like that you'd buy yourself. But for all of that, it really is about just getting together, meeting friends and fans, and getting those hugs in and connecting with community. The following day, on the 21st of November, which is a Friday, I have a limited number of spots for in-person consultations. Should you be in the Montreal area and you would like that, please reach out to us at my team as well over on my website using the contact form there. All those links are below. I hope and look forward to meeting my fellow Canadians and also Americans as well, whether it is that you join me for that live workshop hosted by Astrology Niagara, or whether it is that I meet you at our meetup or for a consultation in Montreal. It would be wonderful to connect. So stay tuned. Follow me on social media. Make sure you're on my newsletter, but also know I will make sure to have certain links here below to help you to save those dates and stay tuned for even more details of where all this wonderful stuff is coming up this month. And consultations are now available with me over on my website, nadiyashah.com/consultations. Now, speaking of Andy, he normally does consultations as well over on my website, but he's just taking a bit of a break. So be on the lookout for him coming back to do consults. But at least for now, it's me that you get, and there's a very limited number of consultations available. But thank you so much to those of you who do sign up and who do see something of value in my interpretation of your sky. It means so very much to me, and to hold that space for you as well is deeply meaningful, to have your trust. And the time is whatever you want it to be. So sometimes people like to just be silent and then I just talk and talk. And sometimes people like to have more of a dialogue, and that's okay as well. However it is that you would like me to focus the time, but also what you would like me to talk about, it is totally up to you to focus and use that time as you like. It is your time after all. And to sit with you in consultation, it is really such a privilege, such an honor. So thank you for that. So you can learn a lot more by going onto my website, nadiyashah.com, and clicking on consultations. There you will see my calendar. There are just a few days between now and the end of the year slots that are available. Once you choose your slot, you'll be directed to a form. You fill out that form with all the info that I would need in advance to be ready for your reading, to be prepared, to have the birth data and the charts ready. And then once you make your payment, you will automatically be sent a Zoom link. That Zoom link is going to be your link for the time that we've confirmed, and it will be that link that you will use to log on at the time that I will meet you there online. And so it's a very automated process, but my team is available to you should you need by using the contact form over on my website, nadiyashah.com, and more. And so again, thank you for your trust. Thank you for watching, yes, but also for wanting a consultation. All of it means so much. Thank you. And thank you for watching once again. I am so grateful for it. Again, I'm super excited. Oh my God, we've got a wonderful November coming up, not just for us collectively in terms of the sky, but also just the things that I have coming up next weekend, right? Before I sit down and have next week's video published, I will have done my Niagara Falls event, which is super exciting. And then it's going to be on the 20th that there is going to be a meetup taking place in Montreal. The following day, the 21st, there are going to be a limited number of consultations. So just really looking forward to connecting with friends and fans out there. It's going to be a wonderful November. Outside of that, though, I will say for those of you who are in Southern Ontario, for those of you who are in sort of the east part of the United States, we're going to get a lot of snow this Sunday. I don't think I've seen like big snow in quite a few years, but really there's nowhere else I'd rather be than home right about now. So it'll be nice to see, I guess. I'm really not a snow person, but my parents tell me I was born during a blizzard. So there you go. I should find it familiar in some way. I'll let you know. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned for short horoscopes right now. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. On more literal levels, it is said that retrogrades are not the time to start something new. This is especially true with Mercury retrograde because Mercury is so much about the small moments of our day as we move through life. It's about commerce. It's about shopping, decision-making, communication, what we're thinking, what we're speaking, what we're understanding from others, what we're understanding about what we need, whether it is what we need to do, what we need to acquire, what we feel are our choices, what choices we feel we have to take. And with a retrograde Mercury conjunct Mars, it might feel like we have to make a decision right now, but that might not necessarily be the case at all. It becomes important to strive to the best of our ability to be honest, but also where possible to allow ourselves space, to allow ourselves grace. And again, in very practical ways, you know, if you are going into a retrograde and you know that you might change your mind, you know that, okay, all these planets are retrograde and I'm going to go and make this major purchase, or I'm going to head and go and make this choice or this decision. Well, if you're going to make the purchase, it might be a good idea to allow yourself to purchase somewhere where you know you could return or you could exchange, should you feel inspired to, should life take you in that direction, to have a conversation and make certain choices where you still know you're allowing yourself some flexibility, where you're able to acknowledge that this isn't you know, signing in blood, some sense of a karmic contract here, but rather you're able to just acknowledge that, okay, this is an agreement for now. However, there are ways in which it could evolve and go in other directions, and that would be okay as well. Regardless of how it is that you decide to bring the energy of these powerful retrogrades forward, keep wisdom at the forefront with Jupiter retrograde. And also with Mercury retrograde, know that misunderstandings become very possible, whether those misunderstandings are the ones you're having with others, or those misunderstandings are in terms of your own personal understanding and evaluation of what you think is really going on in some circumstance, if only within your own life. Allow yourself space and grace to change your mind should you need. Now, one thing I really do like about retrogrades, especially Mercury retrograde, and especially this Mercury retrograde that's making all kinds of connections with other power players in the weeks ahead, and I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way. Thing with Mercury retrograde that is especially promising is the ways in which people, places, situations, opportunities from the past, or that we thought were gone, that we thought, you know, we'd had our shot and it was done and it was over. It's those very people, situations, opportunities that feel like they might come back around in sometimes uncanny ways. Now, Mercury rules transportation, especially the kind of transportation that's a little bit more local, or the actual nuts and bolts logistics of transportation is what Mercury rules. So Whereas Jupiter is about long distance travel and going out for the adventure, wanting more experience. Well, Mercury is like the actual plane that you might be on. It is the people who might be working on the plane. It's your car, the car rides, the train, the bus, the automobiles, all of that stuff, right? That's what Mercury rules. And so it is not uncommon for some of these uncanny, seemingly random moments of reunion, of a return to something we thought was lost or gone, of an opportunity coming back around. It is not uncommon for this to take place in the process of transport or while we are on some mode of transportation. And so being on the bus, running into somebody that you actually met one time on the other side of the world, that can feel completely random. And yet that's the kind of thing we're talking about when we talk about these uncanny surprise reunions that Mercury retrograde is often known for. It's the mode of operations, but it's also the modes of communication that are covered here as well. And so whether that is now, especially in our modern world, social media, like the last person you expected to see their profile, there they are. You thought you blocked them everywhere. Oh no, there they are for you to look at. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to contact them or you need to have any communication with them, but it is a very powerful way to just get that other look into, okay, here was a connection. This connection didn't work. Does it feel like there's an opening to try it again? Or does it feel as if you're just being reminded how grateful you are that that person is no longer in your life? Either way, it is karmic, it is uncanny, and it is powerful. And so it is also with opportunities, certain opportunities that don't work out. We don't realize in the moment how that's actually a really good thing for us until we see it, until we do. And sometimes we need these little reminders where it feels like an opportunity comes back around for us to be able to say, oh, wow, I thought that that's what I really wanted then, but now I see where I am now and that isn't it. But it's also possible that whatever comes back around, even if we're excited about it and enthusiastic about it, it doesn't end up being what it is that we think it will be. Sometimes with Mercury retrograde, whether it is a new person that we're meeting, a new potential love or relationship, whether it is a new job opportunity and otherwise, sometimes things being different once Mercury goes direct on the 29th of November means that the direct brings with it, there's a whole other perspective that makes you say, oh dear, what was I thinking? Oh, get me out of here. But sometimes things can actually work out a whole lot better than we had anticipated, that we even thought was possible or a pathway towards it. And so if it feels like there are things in our life right now that are brand spanking new, not connected to anything from the past, well, then the likelihood of us understanding or recognizing or having things turn out in a way that's very different, especially once it is that we navigate into December, well, that becomes that much more possible. The difference is going to be there. And yet it still might end up being better than we anticipate, than we plan for, than we think it's going to be, as we find ourselves in this moment of welcoming in that possibility now. Now, how Mercury going retro will speak to you in your sign depends on your sun, moon, and rising. Take all three into consideration. Synthesize the information to make it unique to you. And there's lots more horoscopes available right now over on my YouTube channel, Nadiya_Shah, and in the superstar space at thefutureismagical.com. Aries, Mercury going retro in a worldly part of your sky having to do with long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, legal matters. Well, it's all of this that might be wonky. It's all of this that might feel as if just where you know where you're going, figuratively or literally in this case, well, things just might change in some cases very quickly, especially in the next couple of weeks. For all that though, remember, this is about you reconsidering and understanding with greater nuance where you stand in your relationship with the world itself. And that is a deeply personal, philosophical thing. You don't need to have all the answers where it comes to that understanding, but the exploration itself will be well rewarded. Taurus, profound change, truth, transformation, regeneration, and wealth. This is a particularly intense part of your sky, and it can feel very consequential. Now, having Mercury go retrograde here can have it feel like those things that you knew to be true, those things that made you feel very connected to what it is to authentically be yourself, well, they're all up for reconsideration, or in some way, what you thought was true, it just turns on its head and you think maybe that isn't so. It really is not the time to make big financial decisions in particular. And there might be a sense that there are some delays where it comes to things like benefit payments or commission checks, but all of that will be cleared, because when you do have such strong financial energy, it means that the money is there. You're engaging spiritual lessons towards feeling that much more like it is within your grasp. Gemini, partnerships of all kind, whether it's romantic partnership or business alliance. Here's the thing with Mercury retrograde here. If there are established alliances in your life, whatever decisions and choices you think are playing out, well, you just might change your mind, or they might change your mind. Misunderstandings become that much more likely, and breakups that happen tend to not stay broken up with Mercury retrograde in this part of your sky. For all that, if you are open to meeting new people, know that the people you meet and what you think it is right out of the gate at the start and what it ends up being might be two very different things. It might end up being even better than you anticipate or not. Regardless, if you feel inspired towards walking a journey with someone brand new, allow yourself the flexibility to know that, yeah, things might look different, and that's okay. Cancer, clients, customers, coworkers, the type of work you're doing, the people who surround you, but also the places you frequent day in and day out, as well as your health-related habits and your sense of well-being. So this part of the sky is so rich in terms of where life actually occurs. So there are things here about, well, misunderstandings, one step forward, two steps back with assignments that you're doing, thinking that there's a certain project that needs to be carried out a certain way, and then it ends up being turned on its head and becomes something else. And those miscommunications with the clients, customers, coworkers in your life become that much more likely. Where you want to be careful with this especially is where it comes to health-related testing. Whatever you think it is, whatever answers seem to be there, well, it just might be the case that there is a need for a do-over, right? Because misdiagnoses become possible for you at this time and in the weeks ahead. Whatever might be happening now, just know that it might take, as you move into December, to really clear things up, to really understand where you stand, which might actually be way better than you anticipated once you get there. Leo, romance, flirtation, what the heart wants in every area of life. Gambling and windfalls are covered here as well. So you can imagine with Mercury retrograde here, and especially right out of the gate with the retrograde beginning hand in hand with Mars, not the time for gambling if you can help it, because there's just going to be a lot of high stakes energy, lots of adrenaline, yes, but Mars itself can lend itself to a lot going out. So just pace yourself as you navigate this time. But dumb luck becomes very possible with Mercury retrograde here. And of course, because this has to do with romance, flirtation, you are getting your flirt on. People that might have been lovers to you or you might have dated in the past might come back around in uncanny ways. Whether or not that means moving forward with them is besides the point. It really is you seeing or having another look at someone who you thought could have been a possibility before and deciding whether or not it's worth the effort now. Virgo, home, the past, your living situation, your family of origin, and your parents where that applies. So random family reunions where you least expected it become that much more likely now. Home becoming a space that's especially busy can happen also. Now, I would also add, if you have a home-based business or you work with homes, this can be a time of opportunities that you thought were gone, coming back around in some way, or a reconnection, a renewal of past projects or clients coming into the mix. Regardless, the deeper implication here is to understand what home is for you that much more deeply. And where it is that you're able to find a way to communicate that, to express that, well, you'll find yourself feeling that much more well-rooted in where home is now. Libra, siblings, cousins, neighbors, there are likely to be lots of random new interactions with these types of people in your life where you least expected it. And there tends to be an overall sense of busyness in your local community and your immediate environment at this time. But for all that, this part of the sky also has to do with learning and communication. And if anybody out there is likely to find communication going wonky, where you think you understand something one way, but it is actually something very different, well, all of that becomes possible at this time. So just pace yourself and provide yourself with grace, knowing that perhaps you're not getting things as intended, and it really is okay, because the time for clarity will come in due course. Scorpio, money you earn, money you spend, self-love and self-esteem. There's going to be a focus on earning and spending, and maybe some feelings of uncertainty or disconnect around what's worth doing for money and what isn't. If anybody out there is likely to spend and then realize afterwards that you change your mind, it really is you. So just be aware of that if you are buying things, that there's a good return policy in place, because whether it is that you just change your mind and you realize it isn't what you want, or whether it is that you realize you actually need something different, well, these are the types of scenarios that can play out at this time. At the same time, this part of the sky having to do with healthy self-love, healthy self-esteem, this might be a moment where you're revisiting these matters to find a greater sense of connection and a firm rootedness and an understanding of what healthy self-love is going to be for you. Sagittarius, identity, who you know yourself to be, what matters to you most and first. Just when you think you know what that is, it just might get turned on its head. Just when you think you know who you are, it might end up taking you in different directions that you didn't expect, until you find yourself back at the beginning. Now, that beginning moment is likely going to come once we get into December, because this first 10 days of this retrograde happen with Mercury retrograde in your sign. The second 10 days will be in the sign before yours. And that's where Mercury will go direct next month in December, re-entering your sign. That is going to be a big light bulb moment once we get there into December with that re-entry of Mercury. That's when whatever's happening now, you just might see it so differently, including what it is that you believe you are really wanting, what it is that you believe truly matters. It might not be what you think it is right now. So just be patient with yourself, provide grace for yourself, because you're always allowed to change your mind and change your mind about your self-concept and who you are. Capricorn, soul, psyche, spirit. It's about what's happening on those unconscious levels, those imaginative levels. Now, there might be some very profound, deep symbolism to what's taking place in the dream space that you are going to want to pay attention to. But outside of that, though, this is about fortunate karmic closures and karmic blessings as well. Some of the best stuff with this retrograde is going to feel like it reappears seemingly out of nowhere, but also where it is that perhaps there's been a little bit of stop and go, where it comes to an area where you know some sense of healthy closure needs to take place. Well, you might find this a time when you're re-examining more deeply what that's going to look like for you. Ultimately, this part of the sky is about connecting with a knowing that you have so much more yet to do in this lifetime. And you really do. Keep that at the forefront as you navigate a time where some of the best stuff is just going to find you. Aquarius, friendships and group dynamics, returns to, reunions with, recommunications with friends from the past, friends of the present becomes very possible here now. But what also is possible is that you are reconsidering your role within a group, maybe invited to come back to contribute to a professional group endeavor. These are some possible scenarios that might be transpiring for you at this time. But for all that, this is about you understanding your connection to that larger whole. Whether it is through social situations and gathering with others, or whether it is a larger understanding of humanity itself, there are lots of people around you, lots of ways in which you can connect to a feeling of community, knowing not only that you're not alone, but there's a lot of support available to you. Pisces, career, social standing, life purpose, your understanding of a higher, more loving vision for your life and the bosses in your life as well. If anybody out there is going to feel like there was an opportunity and it went away and it was big and you really wanted it and it didn't pan out, and it's that opportunity that in some way comes back around. It might not be identical, but it might actually be better than it was before. It certainly is you. Random reunions with previous bosses, people in positions of authority to you, become that much more likely now as well. Regardless, understand that whatever opportunities come to advance, for promotion, for alignment with career goals, what you think it is and what it actually ends up being might be very different once it is that we navigate into December and a direct Mercury returns to this part of your sky. And so be patient with yourself as you navigate this time. It is very possible that whatever it is that you think the opportunity is now, it could end up being even better than you anticipated. Well, thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.